2001 is seared on our collective memories. And every single year since then, we have had an annual memorial service dedicated to the memory of the almost 3,000 Americans who lost their lives on that fateful day 14 years ago. We should remember those who were in the World Trade Center, those who were in the plane that was downed in that field in Pennsylvania, and those here in the Pentagon that lost their lives. So if you'd like to take a moment of silence, just to remember those wonderful Americans. Saudi Arabia is looked upon today as a friendly ally of the United States. On February 14, 1945, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt met King Abdulaziz Al Saudi on a boat, the Quincy, the USS Quincy, and that was a little bit north of Saudi Arabia. They had made a deal. Americans have just fallen in love with their automobiles, and Saudi Arabia was home to vast oil fields. And they had decided at that point that this impoverished, empty nation would be the source of our oil. Saudi Aramco developed out of this, and Saudi Arabia, as you know, has become extraordinarily wealthy in the years that has ensued because they have oil under their ground. However, the Saudi royal family gave the education of their youth to the Wahhabists, and they didn't realize that they were creating Frankenstein. And we have actually been empowering them, and Wahhabist terrorism actually spawned Al-Qaeda, and Al-Qaeda has spawned the Islamic State. So I think it's extraordinarily important, even though right now we are in the midst of congressional debates about the Iran nuclear deal, but we still have to remember that Saudi Arabia and the vast oil wealth that we have empowered them with has resulted in the scourge of terrorism throughout the globe, and that 3,000 Americans died as a result of this.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm a stand-in this morning for our great friend Steve Emerson, and you're absolutely right. The work that Steve has done over the last 20 years, the work that he has done at the Investigative Project at Terrorism, just stands out for the insight and the foresight that Steve and that organization have had. Disappointingly, that what Steve was talking about in the 1990s and what he anticipated as he put together the Investigative Project in Terrorism, all of the stuff that he talked about came to fruition, and perhaps in a greater scale than what even Steve envisioned back in the 90s when he put this organization together. Thank you for holding a commemoration and a commemoration of the 9/11 event. It seems like every year, and it's kind of interesting. Congress will be in session this year on 9/11. I remember when 9/11 was a day that we were assured that Congress would not be in session, so that we could go to memorial service and remembrance services in our districts back home across America, and that we would be commemorating and remembering those horrific acts, recounting where we were, the impact that we felt, but more importantly, taking it as an opportunity to educate the American people continually about this ongoing threat. And the reality is that, and I just wrote an op-ed on this, the reality is that after 14 years, this 14th anniversary of 9/11, the threat has grown, it has escalated, and America is at greater risk today than it was 14 years ago, and that we have not developed effective strategies. We have not gone through a process that, as I worked with Newt Gingrich, we called lessons learned. What works and what doesn't. And we're almost repeating many of the same mistakes over and over and over again that has created this environment. The latest mistake will be the one that really was made 60 days ago when the president reached into an agreement and decided that we could negotiate and we could work with Iran. And I think this is a mistake that we continually believe, that we are dealing with rational actors when we are dealing with the threat from radical Islam. And they are not rational, they are irrational. And when we try to act rationally with them, they see it as weakness and they will take advantage of it each and every day. Think about it. I was in Europe 2.5 weeks ago, and we went through Budapest. And we were fortunate. We were there on Saturday. We went through the railroad station in typical communist inefficiency, even though they're no longer a communist country. They have still not regenerated or recreated their institutions. We went to a window and we got a line we got in line 3 people and got a number that would then allow us at some point to go to the ticket office and purchase tickets. And it wasn't, there were 15 of us in this railroad station that you saw a few days later, with thousands of people in it. But there were 15 of us. But, what you are seeing going on in Europe today is a recognition of the people in the Middle East that they have no hope. I mean, these are people who are taking at great risk. They are fleeing northern Africa, they are fleeing Syria, they are fleeing Lebanon, they are fleeing Yemen, they are fleeing Iraq, because they see no hope. They don't see anything that gives them any degree of confidence that says America and Europe are ready to confront the threat and the realistic attacks from ISIS today. They see a half-hearted campaign from the United States, Canada. I just read yesterday, Australia is now going to start flying planes over Syria, and that's great. And every once in a while, they will drop a bomb. And that's the strategy to confront and contain and ultimately defeat ISIS in the Middle East. And in reality, they continue to gain ground, and they continue to build their infrastructure, which means that they're going to be a player for the long term. And so, and then these refugees flooding into Europe, are also seeing that the United States is cutting a deal with Iran. And seeing that Iran is going to get somewhere between $100 and $150 billion flowing into them, the people in the Middle East are not saying, yes, this is an opportunity, this is hope. We're going to see a strong economy develop in Iran. We're going to have a new island of stability with Iran, and Iran is going to use this money to stabilize Iraq. They're going to use this money to stabilize Yemen. They're going to create economic opportunity. There's going to be more opportunity and security and safety for our families and our kids. Yes, there's a new future on the way, and they're saying, no, this is $150 billion that is going to another scourge in the Middle East, and they're going to use it to destabilize to a greater extent what's going on in Yemen. They are going to use it to try to destabilize, yes, Saudi Arabia. They are going to use it to destabilize Jordan. They're going to use it to increase their influence in Iraq, to support Assad in Syria, to destabilize Turkey, and ultimately to destroy Israel. And so they're saying, we are voting, and we are voting with our feet, and we are going to take the risk, and we are going to leave the Middle East We are going to leave Northern Africa because we don't see and we don't have any hope moving forward. So 14 years after 9/11, remember when, I still remember we were talking about we need to go and we need to, our strategy needs to be to confront the evil, to identify the evil, to eliminate their opportunities for safe havens where they can plan, prepare, and train to attack the West. And we were talking about some obscure area that if you described it, very few of us on the map could find. It's the mountains and the caves and the desolate area of the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. And I was there. I've been there. I've been on the border. I dressed up local and we flew in with a helicopter because they said if they see people in Western garb flying into this base, they'll start lobbing mortars in. And Jane Harmon and I flew in there and we walked around. And it is a desolate area. You're flying over this on, either on the Afghan side of the border or the Pak side of the border. There's nothing there. But that was the safe haven. We couldn't find it on a map. You didn't know how you would get from there to the United States, although obviously 19 people did find a way to get there from the United States, to get to the United States. But it was kind of like, if we can control that area. Well, if you now take a look at the areas that where radical jihadists can plan, train, and prepare to attack the United States, you look at Libya, you look at Northern Africa, the soft underbelly of Europe. Ever since Gaddafi has been overthrown, that has now been a failed nation state, and it's exporting people, and it is now a route for radical jihadists to go into southern Europe. And once they're into Europe, obviously it gets to be much easier for them to get into the United States. You have the problem now with the Middle East and people flooding in from Turkey, going into Greece, into Hungary, and then on to Germany. And that provides a whole other range of problems and threats to us. But again, the radical jihadists can plan, prepare, and train to attack the United States in Syria, Iraq, parts of Lebanon, parts of Yemen, again, with much easier access to Europe, into the United States. And so the places where they can prepare to attack us are much greater and much closer than what they were 14 years ago, and these people have much greater capabilities than what they had 14 years ago. As you watch the exodus from the Middle East, and I know there's a tremendous amount of concern that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and radical jihadists are part of this movement. And I believe that is absolutely true. But they're smart enough to figure that out. That says this is an opportunity. Think about it. Germany is thinking of accepting 800,000 refugees. 800,000 refugees in the next year, and saying into the future we are willing to accept 400,000 to 500,000 people per year. And I worry about the small percentage of those who have radical ties who are going to be part of that. But I'll tell you what my bigger concern is. Europe has shown itself to be terrible at assimilation for these groups coming into Europe. Assimilation and integration. These individuals do not come and they do not become integrated. They do not come to Germany and become German. I'm a native-born Dutchman. They don't go to the Netherlands and become Dutch. They don't go to France and become French. They don't go to Britain and become Brits. What I am worried about is that they will move into the enclaves that are already there. They will expand those enclaves exponentially, and they will become a breeding ground Because what they will find is that they came for certain values, but as they are there and they are not assimilated and integrated, they will not achieve, in the next generation will not achieve and get what they expected they would get when they went to Europe. And they will then become the breeding ground for homegrown, they will become the next round of homegrown terrorism. And, so this, and it's the wrong strategy. What is amazing to me is that there is all this pressure, and I expect that the Pope will come here in 2 weeks, and the Pope will say, the United States needs to take its fair share of this refugee population. And there will be little to no discussion about what do we have to do to get to the root cause of this problem, which is we need to eliminate ISIS, we need to contain Iran and its proxies throughout the Middle East, but that discussion is not taking place. The discussion is not taking place as how after 14 years has this problem grown, and why is this problem growing exponentially, and why are we now allowing this problem to be imported into Europe and imported in the United States rather than confronting it in the Middle East? There are certain things that we could be doing right now that we are not. I'll just close with a couple of things. I've done some work for the Kurds. Okay, for the last 2.5 years, I mean, the Kurds have suffered over 1,000 killed in action fighting ISIS. That would be the equivalent in the United States. The Kurds, there's 5 million people say that's 1,000. It's not a big number. There's only 5 million Kurds in northern Iraq. That would be equivalent to the United States having this 50 to 60,000, the number that we lost in Vietnam, losing that number of Americans in 1 year. And that's what the Kurds have sacrificed to fight ISIS. And the U.S. is unwilling to train, equip, and arm the Kurds. The Sunni tribes in Iraq, they are willing to fight ISIS. They are willing to fight for their homeland. We are unwilling to train, equip, and arm the Sunni tribes. And they're at the tip of the spear. Who are we aligned with? We are aligned with Baghdad. We are aligned with Baghdad, who is aligned with who? Iran. And Iran does not have our best interest in mind. Who is Iran allied with? They're also allied with Assad. So, we're standing with the wrong people in the Middle East to confront ISIL, and to defeat them. You take a look at, we are not, why are there are 2 million, the Kurds have also taken on 2 million refugees. So you're a country of 5 million, or a region, okay, Kurdistan regional government. For all intents and purposes, the government that is functioning independently of the central government in Baghdad. They've taken on 2 million refugees. And again, why are these refugees fleeing these camps? Inadequate food, housing, and shelter. So we're not providing them enough assistance. And so they're, again, willing to take, they're not only saying that we're not going to defeat them, but that as they are refugees or displaced individuals, they are not going to get the support that allows them to have some kind of security, safety, and a healthy environment. So they're fleeing. And the U.S. is contributing to this. Let me close on one brighter note. Okay? We do have a model for success, as hard as it may be for you to believe. And I've written a book on this. It will come out later this month. It's Libya. And everybody kind of looks at me when I mention Libya. Let me just, the story of Libya. Muammar Gaddafi. The guy who is the mastermind of shooting down Pan Am, blowing up Pan Am 103 over Scotland. Over 200 people killed, including additional people killed on the ground. Masterminded by, not only by Gaddafi, but his intelligence chief, who was a graduate of Michigan State University, Musa Kusa. Okay. The discotheque bombings, the bombing of the embassy or the barracks, you know, so Libya was an outcast. For 20 to 30 years, the West, Europe, and the United States, we ostracized them. We cut them off. So if that's the kind of behavior you are going to engage in, we will contain you and confront you, and you will be a pariah in the world community. And they were. In 2003, for whatever reason, but after Republican and Democrat administrations for 30 years had kept Gaddafi on the outside, Gaddafi came back and said, I give up. What do you want me to do? I met with Gaddafi 3 times from 2003 to 2009. I never forgot who I was meeting with, you know, the horrific acts and what a terrible person this was. And it didn't become a model of democracy in Northern Africa, where you'd say, wow, I'd like to live there. You know, I was on the Mediterranean. I live on a community in the lakeshore and lakeshore of Lake Michigan. And Diane and I always aspire to have, you know, just our little 100 feet of beach on Lake Michigan. In Libya, we could have had 1,000 feet on the Med, because there's nothing there except a beautiful beach. But you know, we would never gotten to the point where we say, yeah, we're ready to move there and live there. But after 2003, and this is the real difference with Iran. Number one, Gaddafi said, I'm going to move away from terrorism. He said, I'm going to change my behavior. Compare that to what's going on in Iran. Gaddafi helped us identify and capture Libyan terrorists. Do we really? Iran will not even release American citizens. Gaddafi paid reparations, and that will never make a family whole who has had someone killed, but paid reparations to the victims of Pan Am 103 and the discotheque bombing. Will Iran be held accountable for its acts of terrorism against Americans and be asked to pay reparations? The answer, we know what the answer is no. In Iran, we have a Rube Goldberg scheme of verification. You know, if you do this and this and this and this, and you give us 24 days, maybe you can go into this site. What did we do with Gaddafi? Yeah, well, we bombed him at one time, but after 2003, what happened to his nuke program? He gave it up. If you wanted to see his nuke program, all you had to do was go to one of Spence Abraham's, our energy secretary, go to one of his warehouses in the United States, and that's where his nuke program was. He gave it up totally. He became an ally. Libya became a rock of stability in Northern Africa. The flow of migrants, of terrorists from Northern Africa into Europe was non-existent. There was a commonality of purpose. He recognized that they were a threat to him, and that U.S. and Gaddafi and Libya could come to common purpose. But he only came to that realization because America and the West identified him for the evil and the threat that he was. We dealt with him as an evil man, and we ostracized him and said, we will not engage with you until you decide to change your behavior. And ultimately he did. The lessons learned there, whether you're dealing with Iran, whether you're dealing with ISIS, or whether you're dealing with Al-Qaeda, or whether you're dealing with the Muslim Brotherhood. This president thought he could deal with Iran. He thought he could deal with the Muslim Brotherhood. We have to identify these individuals and these groups for the evil that they are. We have to do everything within our power to contain them, and with the ultimate goal of eliminating them until they change their behavior. And they need to understand that if you are, the radical jihadist movement needs to understand that we know who they are, we are committed to their destruction, and we will never give up, which is exactly the opposite message of what this president is sending. He's sending a very, very different message, that we will engage with you. We believe that you will moderate your views. The lesson learned is they will not moderate when they say they want to destroy Israel, and when they will say they want to destroy the West. We need to take them at their word, and we need to realize that that is what they want to do, and if we are to survive, we need to confront them, contain them, and ultimately defeat them. So, thank you.